Hello again. Although I do not believe that Islam is an inherently bad religion, it certainly differs from religions such as Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, and so on. For instance, it is a relatively young religion, at least compared with those others which I mentioned. Think for a moment how violent, thrusting, aggressive, and intolerant Christianity was in Europe when it was of a similar age to Islam. Say, when Christianity was 1400 years old. I'm thinking here of things like the Crusades and Inquisition, to give two examples. In time, Islam might mellow, but that time is probably centuries away yet. Another difference between Islam and other religions in general is that Christians and Jews, Hindus, Sikhs, and Buddhists are all of them happy to live quietly in any society, observing their religions peacefully and not troubling anybody else. This is not and never has been throughout history the way with Muslims. Muslims are vociferous and constantly demand consideration for their religion over and above that afforded to other faiths. Hindus, Sikhs, and Jews all have particular dietary requirements, but do not see these as having anything to do with those who do not follow their own religion. The average person in Britain would be hard pressed to say what the Sikh religion requires as far as food and drink goes, but everybody knows about halal food. Not only do we know about it, but hospital patients and school pupils are often obliged to observe the rules of Islam when it comes to eating. Many hospitals and schools find it easier and less likely to involve them in rows with militant Muslims simply to ensure that all their food is halal. This is outrageous, but speaking of it is liable to see you branded a rabid Islamophobe. In other words, unlike other religious groups, Muslims hope to impose their beliefs upon everybody else. This is at best irritating and at worst dangerous. At the same time that this is happening, Muslims seek political power, sometimes at regional but also at national level. This is why so many mayors in Britain are now Muslim, some councils dominated by Muslims, and why we now have a Muslim Home Secretary. Always, the aim is to increase influence and exert pressure to advance the interests of their religion. Where this leads can be seen in countries with a larger percentage of Muslims than is the case in our own country. In Cyprus during the 1960s and 1970s, the percentage of Muslims was just 17 or 18%, but always they had their eyes on gaining control of the island. A third of Cyprus is now entirely Muslim, the island being divided in two after the Turkish invasion in 1974, when all Christians were driven from the northern part. Turkish Muslim settlers moved into the north to ensure that Islam would forever be the rule there. In short, the Muslims in Cyprus had no loyalty to Cyprus as such, but rather to the Muslim nation which they encouraged to invade. It may, of course, be argued that in this case both religion and nationality played a part, but this is also a pattern which we see wherever Muslims settle. We see precisely the same thing in this country, where the majority of Muslims have at least as much allegiance to foreign countries such as Pakistan and Bangladesh as they do to Britain, the nation in which they actually live. This is why some Muslim local councillors in the London borough of Tower Hamlets are currently standing for Parliament in Bangladesh. Despite living in Britain and holding elected positions here, their primary loyalty is to a foreign country, which is Muslim. At the moment, 6.5% of the population of England and Wales is Muslim, and already we can observe that both their actual influence and their desire for greater influence are growing by the day. At current rates of natural increase and immigration, by 2050 they will form almost 20% of the population. This may be regarded as a tipping point, the stage at which Islam becomes an established part of British culture, an irreversible process which will make it impossible further to reduce immigration from Muslim countries. At that point, the Muslim population here is liable to explode exponentially. It's also the proportion at which those Muslims living here might, like the Muslims of Cyprus, start looking for a powerful Muslim nation to protect and perhaps even enable them to take over part of the country as their own state, a bit like northern Cyprus. We need to stop and think about the future carefully and consider the next steps we should be taking, or we will find that our country is actually lost to us and our children.